Okay, so did you just get you a brand new Camaro, used Camaro, or whatever? Or is it about that time that you've been driving stock for a very long time and it's time for you to get some power? Then this video, I want to help you guys out on which is the best intake manifold for your build. When choosing an intake manifold for the LT1 naturally aspirated setup, there is no one size fit all. So there is plenty to choose from, but they all ranges differently and act differently. Depends on where you want your power and the power band and the cam and everything like that. But in this video, I'm going to help you guys out and make sure that with this video, you can pick the right intake manifold for your build. So let's jump into that. So the very first one we're going to start off with is pretty much the basic, I would say the LT1, but you're really not going to get that much horsepower. Prey Performance pretty much like pioneered of just porting the LT1 intake manifold, but I feel like if you're stock, that's the best way to go. Like you could get some gains from that point, but after that, once you start going heads and cam, or if you want to go full bolt on E85 and stuff like that, there's better options for you. So if you want to optimize your horsepower, the best bang for buck I always tell people is to go with the LT2 intake manifold. People ask me all the time, like, what about the BTR intake manifold, or what about the plasma billet? We're gonna talk about those, but for now, the LT2 I would say is a great starter intake manifold for you to have. It gains, like, the power is between like 3,000 and 6,500 RPM, and then after that it just starts to fall off. The pro about this intake manifold, I must say, is that it has a nice torque curve. You don't really lose any torque unless you rivaling with the MSD, which is the next one that's coming up. But you do have some bottlenecks with the LT2 intake manifold because you're only maxed out with a 95 millimeter throttle body. When it comes to porting that intake manifold, you really don't have much to work with besides opening up the throttle body area and the outside. Other than that, you're pretty much working with what you got. Now, with that, it's okay. It's the best bang for buck because I would say, again, it rivals with the MSD non-ported with 90% of the power gains, I would say. I do have dyno sheets of showing like the difference between the two of these different manifolds and where you can choose where you want your power. So I'm not just saying this just to be saying this. There is some data to be backed up with this. So I will be sharing that throughout the video. So that is one good intake manifold to start off with. The LT2 intake manifold is the best bang for buck and won't break your pockets. So that's good there. The second one is the rival to that is the MSD intake manifold. Now this is a very popular one. This is the one I had on my Camaro as it sits today. It's ported and I run a 107 millimeter throttle body on it, and that is an advantage I would say to having the MSD over the LT2. And with the LT2 and the MSD, they do get a lot of horsepower gains, but you have to port the LT2 to get the horsepower gains that you get in the stock out the box MSD. Now, when the MSD becomes ported and you have that 103 throttle body, it will run over the LT2. It will make more power under the curve over the LT2. It's a good intake manifold. And the MSD runs between 3,000, but it rings out a lot better, all the way to 7,000 RPM. It really kind of, you can see it starts to fall off around 6,800, but usually people just rev it out to 7,000 RPM because those 200 RPMs not that big of a deal, and it still performs. And it's a good intake manifold, especially if you want to go boosted because you have a bigger throttle body. With the LT2 intake manifold, I wouldn't trust that manifold to go boosted like that. Like, you can if you want to try it, but I wouldn't try that intake manifold there. Now, the third intake manifold I would say would be the best one. Is what everybody runs, but this is where the confusion comes for most people. It all is the highly high ram. The highly high ram, as y'all can see, is the most popular intake manifold that you see on the internet. But it's not the intake manifold for everybody. So I say that because let's say for you automatic guys that's running the A8, A10s, that is like the perfect intake manifold for you guys because you're not shifting the car, and you can optimize your shift points based on the tune, and you can rev it out because you're not looking. You just foot on the gas, and the car can adjust yourself. Your shift points all the way to 7,000, 7,500, 8,000 RPMs because that's where those intake manifolds shine. Now, if you had an M6, that is not the perfect intake manifold for you. I don't care if you put the shear fab adjustment on there and all that stuff. I don't care if you got a big donkey dick cam. Like, it doesn't matter. The problem with that is that when you have like an M6, which is the manual transmission, the 6-speed. When you have that 6-speed transmission, yes, the highly high rail makes more power as you go further into the power band. But remember, you have an M6 car, so you have to shift and you got to rev out all the way to the moon to get that horsepower gain. If you had the MSD, you will have to rev out to 75 to or 8,000 RPMs. You can make the same amount of horsepower as the guy with the high ram, all the way from 3,000 all the way to 7,000, versus you had to rev out for that extra 1,000. And it all depends on which cam you have. And a lot of guys have cams that rev out that far. And there's a lot of people like me, I would say that I make that power between 3,000 and 7,000 RPM a lot better and more efficient under the power curve instead of it ringing all the way out. I have a dyno graph that I can share you guys those statistics there. And I'll pop it on the screen here. One build I will show you guys, like here go a dyno sheet of a GPI build, high compression and everything, but you can see that even though, yes, he makes about 600 horsepower, but look is where it peaks at. He got to go way out there, man, way out there to get that horsepower. But he's an automatic, so that's okay. So imagine if you was an M6 car, you would have to rev all the way out there too, and it may seem like forever, like, So get that is like the manifolds I suggest people to get out of those three because that is within the budget. Now there's another one that's it's called Plasman Billet, and that is a very expensive intake manifold. That is like a 35 to 4 grand intake manifold by itself. Yes, you can run like a 103 throttle body with that as well, but the power gains is not really there. You can get more power and more bang for your buck with the MSD or with the high ram, honestly. Like, and you can see that on the screen here. I got it plastered right here, like the dyno sheets. This came from K-Tech because they tested each individual manifolds that I'm sharing with you guys on a mild heads and cam setup. So as this popped on the screen here, which one you guys would go with, as they have different lines here. So would you go with the blue line? Would you go with the red line? Would you go with the green line? Or whatever? Which one you feel like works your power band, or which one you feel like is well worth it? To me, I know what I'm going with. Which one is you going with? So I'm all about optimizing the power under the curve, which I feel like a lot of people like to chase horsepower, which is okay. But not all horsepower is good horsepower. And the very last one, because I just got this message, man. Shout out to my boy Wilbur, if I'm butchering your name, but he just reached out to me asking me about this manifold right here, the BTR intake manifold. He asking me like, yo, what's up, man? What you think about this deal on the intake manifold, the BTR intake here in Arizona? I know it's too hot out here, but people go with the MSD. I know you know more about these cars than me. And me personally, like the BTR intake manifold is good, but I feel like it's not good for NA setup. Like, it is more of a boost. I consider it more of as a boost kind of intake manifold. Like, that's where you see the better gains out of that. Or if you're running a very, very, very high compression, naturally aspirated setup. But to me personally, I feel like the BTR isn't the way to go. It depends on the power goal and where it falls at, but it's not the best intake manifold I would say compared to the three that I listed for you guys. So hopefully that answered you guys answers there. So which one you like to use? So like that, man, that's gonna wrap this video up. There's no one size fits all. It's all about which one you want to work with, how far you want your power curve to be, how far you want to shift all the way out there, and which one's the best one for you. But that's going to wrap this video up. If you guys like this video, y'all know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.